Cold open question of the week, Gary.
Yes, sir.
What would be your shadow profession?
What would be my shadow profession?
Yeah, if you had to kind of work in the shadows doing something, maybe illicit, what would you do? What would be your calling, your true calling?
Man, you know what? I would like to produce like wrestling shows. I'd like to be behind the scenes, setting up the storylines and all
Like
that.
writing the stories and all that.
Yeah, that would be fun. I would like that, yeah.
I can see you doing that. I think I'd like to work as like a bartender in like a gangster joint. Getting all the dirt. All right, let's start the show.
You don't hear the music though, do you?
No.
All right, hold on.
Are you playing music? Too bad I can't edit this. Still no music. Conundrum. 1 second. He's giving me the sign. 1 second. He hears music. I do not hear music. Just forget it. Let's just move on.
Because I changed my microphone, my box.
Yeah, you changed everything. All right. Well, tonight on the Brian Lennon Show, we welcome WVIA's own Paul Lazar. He's going to join the pod to discuss college memories, pro wrestling, Hunter S. Thompson, and maybe quizzing high schoolers. That's tonight here on the Brian Lennon Show. And let us welcome to the show. Now, Paul is muted, so hopefully he sees that and can unmute himself. Paul Lazar, welcome to the Brian Lennon Show podcast.
Thank you for having me, Brian. Gary, really appreciate it.
Now, as you can tell, Paul, from our unique opening, we're having a little technical difficulties today.
That was some open, I have to say. If it's the most Paul Lazar thing ever.
Out of all the people for that to happen to, it's Paul Lazar, who, of course, has worked in radio and media for close to 2 decades now.
Close to 2 decades now, almost 20 years, 16 in my current location and 20 overall. So it's been a heck of a ride. It's a lifetime.
All right. It's a lifetime, really. So just to give kind of a background of Paul, this is from your LinkedIn, so hopefully it's still correct and up to date. He's currently the assistant program director, producer, and host of Keystone Edition, the Scholastic Scrimmage host at WVIA Radio, WVIA-TV, and he's won numerous Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasters awards. He's been an online personality for Scranton's own classic rock station, Rock 107, an obituary clerk for the Times Leader in Wilkes-Barre. I heard that's a dead-end job. And a graduate of the Pennsylvania State University. He is an enthusiast for all things Hunter S. Thompson. Thus, I'm wearing my Hawaiian shirt with cigars on it, which I stole from Gary's closet. He's a purveyor of the Eagles music catalog, Macho Man Randy Savage, and has a soft spot in his heart for funny memes on Facebook. Please welcome Paul Lazar.
You've nailed it. I mean, that's the best intro I've ever gotten in my life. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
How do you top that now? I mean,
thanks for listening, everybody. Good night.
Remember, the 9 o'clock show is different from the 10 o'clock show.
So when we started the podcast, it's over 6 months ago now. We started in July. One of the things I wanted to do was kind of reconnect and talk to people from my past life. And you were one of the people who, came to mind. So we've known each other since freshman year of college, which was the fall of 1994. We were in the same English class at Penn State with
That is correct.
Dr. Dolis.
Dr. John Dolis,
That's right.
one of my favorites.
And yes, one of my favorites too. And one of the funniest things that's ever happened to me happened in that class. I would like for you to tell listeners about the incident with the kid who came to class covered in gasoline.
Okay, now my mind is a little fuzzy after almost 30 years. You're going to have to recollect me on that. I don't recall that.
You don't recall that?
Maybe the fumes overpowered me and just killed off all the brain cells that were retaining that memory. I remember there was a cookie incident with Dr. Dolis.
Yes. Now, I don't remember all the facts about the cookie incident, but one of the kids in our class, it was early on in the semester, and the whole classroom, it was in the lower level of the SLC. It's probably been renamed since then. It smelled like gasoline, and everyone kind of smelled it. But no one said anything because we were all like freshmen in college. And then Dr. Dolis came in, and he would usually walk around the room, and he smelled the gasoline and he said something. And then the kid was like, "Oh yeah, my car broke down or ran out of gas, so I had to go get gas. I spilled it on me." It was like all over his jeans and stuff. You don't remember that?
I don't. I honestly do not remember that moment. No.
We laughed about that for weeks. I would have swore you would remember
hoping that
that.
you're going to jog one of those neurons firing away up there. But they've been working hard all day, Brian, and it's about 10 to 10 tonight. I don't know how much chance you have. My bedtime was a half hour ago.
So tell us about the cookie incident.
Well, the cookie incident was, I believe it was one of the first days of class with Dr. Dolis again. Marvelous teacher, great man. And as you know, Penn State in the Study Learning Center, they had the cafeteria, which had any numerous amounts of cafeteria items, burgers, fries, drinks, you name it, they probably had it. And they had these giant cookies, which were probably about the size of my head. And they had oatmeal and they had chocolate chip, I believe, if memory serves, unless there's been some kind of glitch in the matrix that for some reason I'm remembering chocolate chip instead of the oatmeal.
Chocolate chip.
It was chocolate chip. I know they had oatmeal on top of it too. But so Dr. Dolis comes into the class with a cookie on a plate, and he actually offers to share some with us. Nobody partook, if you remember, except yours truly, because I wanted some of that cookie, Brian. That was a good looking cookie, and I ate half of it on him. And I feel like to this day, I should take him some oatmeal cookies or a chocolate chip just to make it up to him and say, I am so sorry for being such a young punk, and I meant no disrespect. But it was a funny moment. He got a charge out of it.
Yeah. I remember him. I had, for most of my schooling, like the last 6 years, I had been in Catholic school, and Dr. Dolis would show up with his running shoes on, his tight jeans, and he would he would do
the jeans.
He would do stretches like with the desk. So he would be like his one leg would be on top of the desk, and he would be stretching his legs, and he would drop the F-bomb with frequency. And for me, coming from like Catholic school, I was like, quite a welcome. It was
a literal bomb for you.
The college, the college experience, which probably not like that at all anymore.
I'm kind of glad I went to college when I did. Now, my college career encompassed 7 years, so I should be a doctor at this point. But the way I see it, it was the best 7 years of my life.
Now, I want to ask you, because I noticed you did graduate, was it 2001, 2002?
It was 2001.
Okay.
It was 2001.
Talk a little bit about your college experience, because I didn't graduate college till 2020, Paul. So
Really? It was that recent?
yes.
How many different
Yeah.
majors did you go through? Were you like me,
Well,
and went through like 6 of them?
I started off as a journalism major.
First mistake.
I flirted with a international relations degree. Then I was business, and then finally then I was teaching, and then finally got my degree in industrial organizational psychology.
What is that? This is the first I've ever heard of this, and I believe in learning something new every day. So please.
Really? It's basically the study of like how organizations work, how people are relating to each other, different departments, communication, all that stuff. It was kind of a combination of really everything I've been interested in, because it has like business aspects, psychological aspects.
Multifaceted.
There's teaching aspects with like dealing with people, training, development.
Right.
And then, yeah, so.
Well, that's cool. I learned something today.
Yeah.
Good
I'm
stuff.
not using it, but
well, I think you are.
Thank you. Now I forgot my original question. Oh, you were talking a little bit about your
my college experience. Yes. So I graduated high school in '94, and I came out and immediately wanted to go to Penn State. That's where I wanted to go. That's where I wanted to be. So my college experience began in 1994 as a computer science major. Now, those who know me know that math is my natural enemy in the wild. And so in the end, that's what the COBOL language got me. I got through Pascal, okay, and BASIC. But once I got to COBOL, I got real scared real quick.
I forgot you were a computer science major.
I was. And, the Commodore 64 training only got me so far. But after that, and realizing it wasn't the path for me, and we all have individual paths that we take, and sometimes we think we have a plan laid out, and that plan's going to be seen through to fruition, and that's not always the case, and there's always going to be detours along the way. So I ended up becoming a sociology major. And then about a year and a half later, I switched because I realized I didn't like large groups of people. That I would go to psychology and work one-on-one with people, or one-on-two, something a little bit more manageable, something a little less people-y. And once I had my first experience in my first 400 psych class, I was blown away by the amount of patience and kindness and professionalism those in the mental health industry need to have to work in such a field, because it's very challenging, incredibly challenging.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And when I made my way down to University Park, as you know, you did 2 years at Penn State Scranton, and then you did the other 2 years. In my case, it was like 4.5 in State College. And so I took took 1 semester of psychology, and I got a phone call early one Monday morning from a friend who shall remain nameless. He's not from the area, but I don't want to put his name out there without his permission. But I got a call about 5:30 in the morning from him asking me what I was doing at that particular moment. Well, I replied that, of course, it was 5:30 in the morning, and I was doing early morning calisthenics while baking a 3-sheet cake, right?
Of course.
He's like, no, serious. We need a co-host down at the radio station down at WKPS, which was down on, I believe it was James Street in State College. or it was in the James building. It was in the James building, 123 James building. I forget the name of the street though. See, that's what happens as you get old. All these little details.
I know what building you mean though.
Yep.
Right. It housed the Collegian, the newspaper for Penn State at one time as well. So I hosted that. It was a morning zoo program, very much what like you hear on any radio station on any part of the dial. And I instantly fell in love with it. And I thought, this is what I want to do. This is where it's at. This is my life plan right here.
Yeah.
It's sitting behind a microphone. It's connecting with people. It's informing them. It's entertaining them. It's educating them. It's forming that bond that, you know, it's very special. And I'm very blessed in that I've been able to do that for the past 16 years at WVIA.
So it was kind of an aha moment, that phone call in the middle of the night or early one morning.
Early one morning, about 5:30 on a Monday morning. And
Yeah.
I went up.
And knowing you, I forgot that you were a computer science major. And knowing you since you're 18, even then you were natural because you were funny. You like to make people laugh. You were relatable. You know, you and I became friends, through
Instantly.
the class, but then we also, hung out at the computer lab when people had to go to the computer lab to use a computer.
What were the names of those chat rooms that we used to frequent? Do you remember? One was Forest, was it not?
The Forest.
And there was Foothills.
Yes. I was only in the Forest.
Okay, I was in the Forest as well. But that was
Do you
back
remember
in
your
the
name?
infancy, in the incipient stages, if you will, of the internet chat rooms that we've all grown to know and love so well.
Uh-huh.
So you host that radio show and you know that, this is what I want to do the rest of my life, sort of thing. So then you switch your major to journalism.
And I was up at the Shields building the very same day, changing my major. Like it was a no-brainer. And when you're that young, I mean, it's okay to make decisions like that, kind of rash decisions that, they're going to keep you in school longer. It's going to keep that student loan number going up. But it's a time in your life where you're trying to figure something out. And for me, at that time, that piece of the puzzle was right in front of me, and I was going to go after it.
Now, did you write for the Collegian as well?
I did not. I did not write for the Collegian. No, I read it. It was a very dedicated reader. It was and still is a very very good piece of journalism, and Penn State does a great job with their journalism program and their broadcast journalism. And they actually moved the KPS facilities from the James building. Now, this is some years ago. They moved the facilities from the James building to the hub. And my wife and I were out there a couple of years ago, and we took a tour of the hub. Of course, it's nothing like we remember it. It's totally different now, but very, very spacious, very nice space. But I have a picture of it somewhere on my phone, and I can forward it to you. There was nobody there at the time, so I wasn't able to, kind of get in and talk to anybody, any of the students utilizing the station at the moment, which was kind of my intention on going out there in the first place. But hopefully we're going to be able to get out there again in the future.
Now, Lisa, our friend Lisa, you probably remember her.
I remember Lisa. She
hosted a show at that radio station as part of her class. So, and she would kind of let me into the studio to co-host with her, and I had a ball there. But then I also wrote for the Collegian. For the year that I was down there, between drinking and partying.
I don't know anything about that, Brian. Not a drop of alcohol has ever touched these lips.
But the experience I got with the Collegian was a great experience, and I ended up getting a job for a newspaper down in Virginia with my clips from the collegians. So yeah, they
Served
really
its
do give
purpose.
you a great opportunity down there.
They do. They really do. And it was a great experience, and I don't regret a second of it, even through all the missteps and, all the 2 steps forward and 3 steps back with the changes of majors. Honestly, I wouldn't have met some of the people that are still in my life today, had I just gone right through. So
Right.
I'm glad that I ran into those detours.
Yeah. And I remember I ran into you at, I think it was McClanahan's. You were working at McClanahan's,
I
and we
was.
hadn't seen each other for probably 2 or 3 years.
hmm
And I had left school. I was probably visiting Gary. And it was probably late at night. I was in McClanahan's, and I'm like going down the frozen food aisle, and I'm like, that's Paul Lazar.
I like to lurk back there. That's just basically, I kind of creeped.
Oh, so you weren't working. You were just lurking in the frozen food section.
Well, I was kind of getting, yeah, part of my job was actually to stock those freezers and the drinks and the milk and the produce and the frozen foods, because it was a great place at the time, my dear wife, to pick up girls.
Can definitely see that.
At the time.
Just during that time.
Exactly.
All right. And then the other things I wanted to reminisce with you about, Paul, was
Sure.
I remember you and I, again, we became kind of instant friends at college, between Dr. Dolis's class, the computer lab, and wrestling.
Yes. One of my favorite
we-
topics.
We would spend Monday nights watching wrestling,
hmm
including some trips we took to our local Marywood.
On the road.
I think it was
Brian
Marywood
and Paul
College.
on the road.
I remember walking that road, kind of like the back road, Gary, if you remember, between like Penn State and Marywood. It's like
yes,
through
okay.
Troop.
Yes. Okay.
I remember
I was
we
trying
walked
to picture
that
it, and I'm
one
like,
night.
wait, oh, that's right. Marywood is kind of okay. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about now. Yep.
So Paul, you remember those Monday Nitro, not Monday Nitro, it was Monday Night Raw.
Monday Night Raw at the time. I do. And I remember one time in particular, we were at Marywood University watch. I forget the name of the building. I'm sorry. I'm not overly familiar with the setup of Marywood. But I remember just basically crashing a watch party for it and sitting there with these people that I didn't know. I don't know if you knew them. Maybe you knew them. I didn't know them. But it seemed like we all bonded over watching WWE there for 2 hours, and that's it brings people together.
It does. And then in fact, when I was down at Penn State main campus, my roommates got me back into wrestling even more, like hardcore, because by that time Hulk Hogan was coming back in '97 to WCW and with the NWO.
What a time.
Yeah, it really was.
That was our golden age, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was almost a second golden age, because it was a lot of the stars that we had watched growing up, kind of like their last hurrah.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, Paul, you still follow wrestling?
I do. I'm more of a hobbyist than anything else. I'm not somebody that obsesses over the NJPW title scene, nor do I really watch anything other than WWE and AEW. Lately, it's been more AEW than it's been WWE. Now, have either of you had a chance to check out AEW?
Yeah, I don't watch it religiously, but I will stay abreast of the wrestling scene. And I do watch AEW as well.
I've seen a little bit of it. Like Brian, I'm same with WWE. I haven't watched it as much as I used to. But I mean, like I said, the Royal Rumble was like the first pay-per-view I've watched in like years. So I was like, oh, okay, well, but then I forget. My problem is I forget what days they're on, and then I get busy, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh crap, I wanted
Well,
to
they're
watch.
switching the
Watch it.
days up now. Saturdays,
So
Sundays. You know, it used to
yeah,
be
it
Sundays
throws
all
me
the
off. I
time.
mean, Raw was the only like that was Monday. That's it. So I mean, that was like a staple. But it's
Mhm.
like all those like SmackDown. I don't think I've ever watched an episode of SmackDown because I just don't know what day it's on.
Well, they keep moving it.
Yeah. So
Kind of hard
I'm
to hit
like,
a moving target.
yeah, exactly. But AEW, like I haven't watched anything, but I do like if I'm on Twitter or scrolling through, I follow a bunch of wrestling stuff on there, so usually stuff for that will pop up, and I'll see who's old former WWE wrestlers that are there now. They'll be popping up. I'm like, oh, that's where
Mhm.
they're at now. I'm like, okay.
There's a
So
bunch of them.
yeah,
And Gary lives in the hotbed of wrestling because he's in the Tampa St. Pete area,
yep, oh yeah.
which is where they all live.
Didn't they? I think AEW actually ran their operations out of was it Bally's?
I think so. Yeah,
They're
it
out
was.
of Jacksonville,
And
aren't
that's
they?
in Tampa, is it not?
I think
Back in the
there. I think
COVID
there's.
days.
I think there's one in Tampa, and I think there is one over in Jacksonville somewhere.
Okay.
But yeah, there is one. Not man, it's not too far from where I live. If you go over the bridge, there is a wrestling facility right there. So that's where like they were doing. I think they were doing a lot of the WWE shows out of here too.
The
A few
Thunderdome.
of them. So, yeah.
The Thunderdome era.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Boy, what a weird time.
Yeah. Now, Paul, did you watch anything over this past weekend in Montreal?
No, actually, I missed everything this weekend.
Mhm.
I was so busy with some other things that I'm trying to work on that it didn't even cross my mind. And I look at the clock and it's 10:45 at night on Friday, this past weekend, and I'm like, I can't keep my eyes open. I'm going to bed. It's a long departure from the college days,
Right.
where 10:30 at night you were just getting up.
Yeah. I laugh about that
So
all the
true.
time. Like, it's 9:00. I'm ready to go to bed. Like
My
20,
wife will say to
25 years ago, I'd be like, oh, it's I'm getting out of work. I'm going to go home, take a shower, and then we'll head out.
You're just getting
Right.
you're just getting dressed to go out.
Right. Now, my wife, she has the audacity to start a movie at 8 p.m. on a work night. And I'm like,
Oh yeah, no.
no, I need 9-10 hours of beauty rest, man.
Yeah.
I'm in bed by like 9:00 every night. I'm really no fun whatsoever.
Maybe like a
Well, we
TV episode, but not a full movie.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
do appreciate you, Paul, staying up as late as you have tonight already to join us here. I would
ball.
recommend to both of you to watch the last 10 minutes of Friday Night SmackDown, and then the main event from this past week's Elimination Chamber. Having been a wrestling fan since 1984, I don't recall a crowd as raucous and for the baby face as Montreal was this past weekend for Sami Zayn.
I heard.
So you have to watch it.
I heard it was a magical moment, like one of the best moments in wrestling in years.
Yeah, it really was. All right, well, let's move on to some other things I wanted to discuss with Paul. Paul, I just finished reading two of Joan Didion's books, one being The White Album. And I know you are a fan of Hunter S. Thompson, who is part of that new journalism genre that Joan Didion is. And I think I've maybe read probably one or two articles that Hunter S. Thompson has written or wrote. So I'm gonna ask you to convince me why I need to read Hunter S. Thompson as my next book.
So Hunter S. Thompson was incredibly special, and to me, was the greatest writer of the 20th century. Maybe 1A under Hemingway. Okay, who coincidentally was Hunter Thompson's hero. But again, Hunter Thompson has a very special place in American literature in that through his 1970 offering, The Kentucky Derby is Decadent and Depraved, that right there was the introduction to what we know now as gonzo journalism. And so it's been something that's really been organic and alive and evolving and ever changing. And that's kind of the beauty of it. And I think if you don't expose yourself to something that's a little bit out there, it's a little bit absurd. We had a discussion prior to the show about, some things. And I said, I have a thing for absurdism and Dadaism, which is basically the concept. Dadaism is, if this is art over here, then this here is also art, no matter how good or bad quality it might be.
Right. I had to look that up, by the way.
Well, you've seen though examples of Dadaism and absurdism for many years. Space Ghost Coast to Coast is one example. Shows like South Park, things along those lines. But back to Hunter Thompson, the real beauty in what he does, and other gonzo journalists too, like Joan Didion and Tom Wolfe, it's incredibly intense. And the great thing about gonzo journalism is it often kind of rejects traditional journalistic standards. And what it does is it instead focuses on their own experiences and feelings, which is a really cool way of looking at something from a journalistic standpoint, if you look at it that way. So ultimately, in a nutshell, if I had to put it in a sentence, I would say gonzo journalism is all about pushing boundaries and telling stories in new and innovative ways. And what Hunter S. Thompson did was he remained an outspoken critic of what he saw as the hypocrisy and emptiness of American society. And this was over 50 years ago. This is early 1970s, 71 with Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. In many ways, very few things have changed. And I think his descriptions in his writings and his books still ring very much true today.
That's something I realized too with Joan Didion. Some of the things she kind of is seeing in the late 60s, the 70s, she's kind of portraying what it might look like in the future. And some of the stuff has come true. As far as like censorship, even, we've seen an issue of that this week with Roald Dahl's books being censored, and they're changing the words, to be more politically correct or less insensitive, however you want to word that. What book would you say we should start with if we were going to read Hunter S. Thompson? The Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas?
Well, you could certainly go that route, and that's the most popular route. I mean, there's a 1998 film directed by Terry Gilliam that's an absolute fever dream that it's based on. I would say, though, if you're going to get into Hunter S. Thompson, something earlier than that, which would have been his Hell's Angels book, which is an eye-opening account of his time spent with a Hell's Angels biker gang in California. And it's very gritty and it's very hard to read at times, but it's probably, to me, next to Fear and Loathing, his seminal work.
Okay. And I think I have read the Kentucky Derby piece. That's one of the magazine pieces I've read. Did he write that for Rolling Stone?
Yes, Rolling Stone. Yes.
Okay.
What did you think of the art in the Kentucky Derby?
I'm not sure what you mean.
There was an illustrator by the name of Ralph Steadman who, starting with the Kentucky Derby story would actually illustrate many of Hunter S. Thompson's books with works of art. He's very Googleable and Facebookable, but very disturbing kind of portraits of the story that was being told at the time by Raoul Duke or Hunter S. Thompson, as it were. It kind of accompanied what Hunter was saying, and it just added another layer.
When I read it, I think I read it as like a best of sports writing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there was any art in the story. Okay. I didn't actually read the Rolling Stone piece. Mm-hmm. That's why I wasn't aware of there being art.
Oh, yes. And he's still active. I think he's 87, 88 years old in England, Ralph Steadman. And he's very accomplished. And I hope to own one of his paintings sometime down the road.
I'm writing him down so I can look at him. Look at his art. All right.
I'll send you some resources.
Thank you. Let me see here. I'm reviewing my notes again. Paul, one of the things I want to ask you about, just as someone who's worked in the media and, journalism and journalistic pursuits over the last, Gary's going to bring up the art for us. Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, right.
There we go.
That's it, right?
I'm familiar with some of these.
Let's see. There we go.
There's the good doctor. Oh, we got to get there we go. Get rid of that.
The KY. Not that KY. All right. Yeah, now I am familiar with
entirely.
I'm interested because you've been a journalist for so long. What's your kind of stance now as far as journalistic standards, journalistic practices? To you, has it changed over the course of the last 20 years, how you were taught, things like that? Just kind of interested in your perspective on that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, it's changed. And it started to change as soon as we more or less invited social media into the conversation to report news instead of doing the deep dive on the facts. You're reading headlines and you're getting misinformation. And this all started with the advent of the internet as we know it, of course, and it works like the rumor mill. Person A says this, person B hears this, person C relays this. And before you get to the nugget, it's been so convoluted and twisted. The main idea behind whatever story they were trying to convey was lost a long time ago. And, that's kind of been the norm, especially over the past 7 years, too, when you have warring news factions, if you will. And from my point of view as a journalist, my job is to be as objective and as neutral as possible, and to hope to God that if I put the facts out there, if I put the story out there, that the person that I'm giving the information to will see that they do their own homework and their own research and dive deeper into the topic, and not just take a surface answer as gospel. And let's face it, that's where we're at, right? Right. We see headlines and we're all over them, and pretty soon, the headline is the story. Well, the headline's not supposed to be the story. And this is what I wish Hunter S. Thompson were around for these questions, because who better to ask than a doctor of journalism? So just my 2 cents, but the landscape has seen a seismic shift in the way that we were taught, because of course we didn't have cell phones at the time. We had to depend on the memory, maybe a voice recorder, and our notes. It was right. Old school. Now, you remember back in the day in elementary school when your teachers would say you're not always going to have a calculator in your pocket during math class? Well,
they were wrong.
They were very wrong, and this is our revenge. Because we take recording devices anywhere we go, which enables anyone to act as a journalist. You don't need an education. All you need is the handy dandy
Cell phone.
apparatus. So certainly it's changed the dynamic. And I think too, it's gotten to the point where it's infected the way that people process their news and not doing their own homework and coming to educated conclusions about stories they hear. Instead, they might hear a word or a comment that might serve as a dog whistle to one side or the other and focus on that instead of the substance of what's being said in the story. And that's a shame. That's a real shame, because if we look back at guys like Walter Cronkite and Peter Jennings and the old school, the old guard, it was just the facts. And you save that embellishment. And it wasn't a journalist's job to tell you how to think or what to think, or to excoriate one group or another. It was, here are the facts, and it's up to you to go out and make an informed decision. And we've gotten away from that.
Do you think there's a way, do you think that any way that we come back to something resembling journalism as we knew it growing up, or an area or some sort of medium for that to still exist?
So that's a great question. So if we look back at our journalistic history, we know that the 1800s, they were littered with yellow journalism. If you remember comics like The Yellow Kid and, all the muckraking that came after. What that was an evolution of journalism. And all we're really seeing here is the 20th and 21st evolution of journalism in our time. I don't know that we're ever going to have a world where it's as it was and everything's, black and white and everything's normal. I think
Just
we're
the
always
facts.
just the facts. and to me, that grieves me. That really and truly grieves me, because without the facts, how can you be properly armed in a civil discussion? You're basically going into to said discussion armed with, you're basically going to an encyclopedia fight with a comic book.
It's a good analogy. All right, to lighten up the mood a little bit, you currently are the host of Scholastic Scrimmage.
I am.
Correct?
I am. Took a
Tell
break
us
this year.
about
I won't be on TV this year due to COVID, because I had a long COVID thing, but I am the host of Scholastic Scrimmage going forward.
Tell us a little bit about that program and kind of dealing with the youngsters, the young generation, and how smart they are.
Well, I have to say there are some really, really talented and smart kids out there. I know that, a lot of times our schools get a bad rap for things that we hear that are going around, curriculum, or, there's issues at this school or that school. There are some very bright students in our area, make no mistake. And they are really and truly the bright spot of doing the show and interacting with them and feeding off their energy. Basically, the process for the show, I would get my questions for the games about a month prior. Usually it was in the day, it was about 2-3 months. So I had plenty of time to kind of prepare the questions. And I found that when you're getting Icelandic volcanoes thrown at you that you have to pronunciate at the drop of a hat, you need to kind of practice that kind of stuff, because you don't want the F to come out like a Y and insult an Icelander or something like that. God forbid, because they have no vowels. What's the one volcano? Eyjafjallajökull? Something like that.
I was going to say, can you give us a little sample of
right.
Icelandic volcanoes?
Right, absolutely. So those are the types of questions that I get, and sometimes I get pronunciators, sometimes I don't, and I have to go and hunt for these pronunciators on these words, keeping in mind there's a running clock behind me that's ticking down the whole time, and I can't stumble on my words to lose any seconds on the clock. So I really have to be really and truly prepared for that program, and intimately familiar with the rules of the game and how things flow. Because if you've watched it, if you watch the show, you know there are times that it's just lightning fast. It's zip, 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 zip. And certainly there's moments where there's lulls. There's harder questions on, say, 14th century medieval health literature that nobody is going to know. But it's certainly a show that you have to be on your toes. You can't be at less than 100%, and you have to most definitely pre-prepare. So I will have approximately 45 chapters, if you will, 45 packets. Each packet is a game, and each packet has 160 questions. No, I think it was, 160 questions. So with 40 games, you times that towards times 160 or 120. See, at this time at night, math gets fuzzy, and I'm just throwing numbers out there. But if you do the math,
you said math was not your friend.
No, it's not, and it's rearing its ugly head here now, and I'm going to get my revenge, math. But the number was somewhere around 4,000 to 5,000 questions for each season of Scholastic Scrimmage that I have to prepare ahead of time. And I do that chapter by chapter, and it's my wife. She has to live with me enunciating and sometimes, berating myself for stumbling over a certain term. Maybe it's a foreign term or a mathematical term or something I'm not intimately familiar with, scientific term, things like that. But there's resources that I can find to make that easier on myself. And using that and effective time management, getting my normal duties done, utilizing the weekends and the weeknights to study the questions, and to go into the game show, prepared, and to see the kids and see their eyes light up when, hey, they're going to the next round. Hey, you won $5,000 for your school. That's big when you're 16 years old. Man, that's top of the line. It doesn't get any better than that. You're on top of the world. And, if that's going to catapult somebody into doing something great in life, hey, it's fantastic. I'm all for it.
Cool. How many of the questions percentage-wise would you say before looking
pretty good. I've gotten pretty good over the years, believe it or not. And I would say about 40%. 40 to 50%.
All right. All right. I want to ask you
questions.
I want to ask you because we had met a few years ago to discuss kind of like some writing that we were both interested in. What are you doing creatively now? Kind of maybe outside work or, personally, are you writing, artwork, podcasting?
So it's just some personal writing for myself and kind of exploring. As you know, I'm a fan of gonzo journalism, but I've recently turned to the horror genre in particular, because it's something that I was introduced to at an early age through films and through books. And I mean, I saw The Exorcist at maybe 8 years old, maybe a little bit too early. I wasn't supposed to, but now you know why I am the way I am, Brian, after all these years, Gary, but I was introduced to horror very, very young. And it was a genre that I learned that it's meant to scare you, but it's not real. It's not meant to be taken seriously. And there's a psychological bent to that as well. And when you tie that in with, my experiences in college, horror and the psychology of horror and how we feel it and how it makes us feel and how we process it have really and truly become fascinating to me. And every horror film is different. If you look at a film like The Exorcist or Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Cannibal Holocaust, which if you've never seen that, I mean, have a bucket ready.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's rough. It's I think it's banned in like 241 countries or something like that.
Will I be able to find this, or do I have to go to like a dark alley to get a copy of it?
Well, you have to give me a couple of days on that. I think I might be able to help you out. No dark alleys required.
Okay.
But we can make it clandestine if you wanted to. Like we can wear, special hats and masks or something.
Well, we might think about that.
Arrange the drop off.
Now, Paul, you had mentioned you like the absurd.
Yes.
And I wanted to kind of have my own game show for you.
I love it.
Now the name of this game is Wrong Answers Only.
Okay.
So I'm going to kind of give you a prompt, and your job is to give me the wrong answer.
I give wrong answers all day, every day, so this should not be a problem.
All right. So, wrong answers only. The greatest tight end in NFL history is?
Definitely not Jeremy Shockey.
My favorite nacho topping.
You ask the hard questions. I'm a purist, so I'm just going to go with the nacho cheese over top. Keep it simple.
First CD I ever bought.
I'm going to say it was the band Poco, which, if you know your Eagles history, Timothy B. Schmidt was a part of that band early on, and then transitioned to the Eagles. So I think it was an early Poco CD.
My last operation was for?
You had a cesarean.
And my Halloween costume this year is?
You were one of the Gem and the Holograms.
There we go. And that, folks, is Wrong Answers Only. Thanks for playing, Paul.
Well, thank you for having me. It was easy.
Now, before we started recording,
mm-hmm.
When we first came on the Zoom here, we greeted each other as Beavis and Butthead.
Before we had any other verbal interaction, I might remind you.
I think listeners should be aware of that.
I think so. Full disclosure, I'm all about that transparency. I'm going to stay on the up and up. We got to keep our street cred.
Now, I believe there's a Beavis and Butthead. Was there a movie that just came out, or is it coming out this year? But I think they're also starting a new series of Beavis and the Butthead.
Yeah, I think it's
Beavis and Butthead. Beavis
and Butthead Do the Universe. That was a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Beavis and Butthead Do America was something like 2000, 2001. And
I think they're actually going to have a new. Yeah, I think they're having a new series.
Yes, on Comedy Central on Wednesdays. But
okay,
I'm almost, I sound like a pitch person for Comedy Central. I'm not. I want to make that perfectly clear. But, part of me is almost reticent to watch the new episodes of Beavis and Butthead, because how often do we find that when we revisit things that we enjoyed from so many years ago, when we come back to them, it kind of leaves us a little cold and a little bit frustrated and wondering why things can't be as good as they were in the old days. I don't think Beavis and Butthead will have that problem. There's plenty of material for them to draw on in society today, most definitely. But one of my favorite programs for sure of all time.
Yeah, 96 was Beavis and Butthead Do America.
96.
2022 was Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe.
Okay.
And then 22 is the TV series, which right now there's 12 episodes. It looks like they've already been out. Yeah. So it started August 4th of 22 and went to October 13th of 22.
Fascinating.
12
I'm
episodes.
gonna have to break down and check it out.
Yeah.
Paul, I feel like my freshman year at Penn State, I took 6 credit Spanish classes in the spring and fall. So I feel like I either spoke Spanish or I was speaking as Beavis or Butthead for that whole freshman year. Because if I wasn't in Spanish class, I was with you, speaking as Beavis or Butthead.
Yeah, what a great memory. I'm glad that you connect me with that time in your life, that I could be a positive influence on what you've become today, which is a successful podcast host and writer and fashion maven.
Yes. Well, this is inspired by you. Yes, as well. So
I appreciate that. It's the extra steps that you do. It's the little things.
It's the personal touch.
That's right.
Mhm.
All right. Well, Paul, if you're familiar with the podcast, you know that we have our own news department.
It's world renowned, I've heard.
And that's headed by Gary McDaniel.
The No Spin Zone.
We call it News of the Weird. Now, Gary, I'm assuming you don't have your theme music?
I was waiting for the theme music, Gary.
I
timed my expression perfectly for the dramatic sting music.
So I don't know why it's not right now.
It's the most Paul Lazar thing ever.
I'll just do the voice intro. How's
Okay.
that? No. And now,
I mean, you can hear
time
I'm talking to the mic, right?
for News of the Weird with your host, Gary McDaniel.
So aggravating. All right, let's see. What do we got? All right. Foul free. McDonald's debuts plant-based McNuggets. McDonald's McNuggets are going foul free. The Chicago-based fast food giant is introducing plant-based McNuggets next week. Germany will be the first market to get them. McPlant nuggets, made from peas, corn, and wheat with a tempura batter, are the second product McDonald's has co-developed with Beyond Meat, an El Segundo, California-based maker of plant-based meats. McDonald's has been selling a McPlant burger since 2021. McDonald's said the nationwide nugget rollout to more than 1,400 restaurants in Germany follows a limited time test at 9 restaurants in the area in August. McDonald's will also start selling the McPlant burger in Germany next week. Availability of the McPlant nuggets and burger in future markets will depend on customer demands, McDonald's said.
Now, Paul, are you eating McPlant burgers or McPlant nuggets?
I tend to stay away from fast food as a general rule, so I don't know what a McPlant is. When it comes to like McDonald's or the fast food king's offerings, I'm like a 6-piece chicken McNobody.
Now, do you eat tofu, or like what does your diet consist of?
So my diet mostly consists.
And may I compliment you? You look like you're in great shape.
Oh, well, thank you. My head's not going to fit in the chat box here much longer, Brian. I appreciate that. No, my diet, and it's important to preface that I'm not dispensing medical advice or anything like that. This is just something that works for me. And
Right.
I have found that a diet high in plants, not a McPlant, but vegetables, fruits, vegetables, salads, healthy lean proteins, turkey, fish, white meat, chicken. They're all staples of my diet. There is a famous sandwich franchise, we'll call them, that are big locally around here. And I don't want to say any names, but they should promote your show, Brian, and they should be an advertiser on your show. But my standing order at this place is simply just on a wheat bun, nothing but vegetables. We're talking spinach, tomato, pickles, onions, cucumbers, banana peppers, green peppers, sometimes black olives if I'm feeling a little randy. Maybe some buffalo sauce on top there during the winter to kind of clear the congestion out. But it's high in vegetables and fruits. I'm sorry?
I'm just laughing. High in vegetables.
Yes, high in vegetables and not much in the way of red meat because I can't afford it. I don't know if you guys have seen the price of meat. It's astronomical. And B, a lot of red meat, it's really not good for your diet to consume that. So being omnivores, what we want to do is have as much of the palate, of that plate kind of in front of you as you can. So, your greens, your vegetables, your lean meats, fish, turkey, legumes are really good, beans. I mean, they're great going down. They're not great coming out. I mean, you only rent them when you think about it, but they are very good for you. Fast food, processed foods, canned foods, they're really, in a pinch, they work, but it's not something you really want to subsist on. And I've kind of weaned myself off of that, with exceptions during the week. Because as we know, during the week, hey, we're working, we're busy, we need something quick. We need something in 90 seconds that you could eat at the desk. You don't have a half hour, 45 minutes to, sit down and have something, healthy, like a salmon salad or something like that. You have to eat, you have to get back to work. That's part of the problem with obesity in America. We've made it so easy for people to go to the value menu and eat for 2-3 days, then we have to go to the supermarket and pick up a couple of bags of salad. So therein lies the problem right there. And we don't live, in a food desert in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. There are some very nice offerings in our area, some great farms, and food scarcity really, if it's not an economical thing, you don't have a problem with it. But those who maybe are economically disadvantaged, well, they're going to depend on the ramen noodles. They're going to depend on the fast food, the value menus, and things they're going to see them through a couple of days rather than just for one meal, no matter how good it might be for them. So really a trick there is to get into a frame of mind that you want to treat your body like a temple, not a tent. I say as I wash off my mud flaps.
All right. And Gary, one more.
Yeah, sure. UK thief admits stealing thousands of chocolate Easter eggs.
He's a millionaire.
Out of London. A man who prosecutors said broke into a UK industrial park to steal almost 200,000 chocolate Easter eggs has pleaded guilty to theft and criminal damages. Jesus. Prosecutors said Tuesday that Joby Poole, 32, used a metal grinder to break through a gate at an industrial park in Telford, Central England on Saturday, then used a stolen semi-truck to tow away a trailer loaded with Cadbury cream eggs and other chocolate goods worth more than 31,000 pounds or 38,000 American dollars.
That's foul.
West Mercia police tweeted Monday that shortly after the break-in, officers stopped a vehicle presumably purporting to be the Easter Bunny on a highway and arrested a man on suspicion of theft. Prosecutor Owen Beale said Poole gave up when he realized police were after him. Poole walked towards the police with his hands up. He was arrested and the load was recovered. He added that Poole had planned the theft and that he had previous convictions for handling stolen goods. Poole entered guilty pleas to theft of a trailer, theft of its contents, and criminal damage to a chain lock. He is expected to be sentenced next month.
Off with his head.
I'm trying to think of a pun, but nothing's coming to me.
It's so bad, it's foul. I'm stuck on foul. I gotta deviate a little bit, kind of spruce it up.
All right.
No more Bagok talk.
We have about maybe 10 more minutes left with you, Paul. Is that good?
Let's party.
I know. Well, I don't know if we'll party, but I know one of the things you mentioned was kind of about mental health and anxiety. That would be something you'd be interested in talking about. Hopefully we give it enough time here toward the end of the show, but was there anything in particular or something particular that you wanted to bring up or discuss?
No, I think that, we still, and this is 2023, and we still have that stigma attached to people trying to go out and finding help, to find help for themselves. When in fact that, it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of chutzpah to take the initiative and to make the phone call to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or even a counselor, a trusted friend, a clergy member, if that's, if you're looking for spiritual guidance. It's important to have those outlets, but we still have that stigma in 2023 that if you look for mental health help, well, you're less than, you're weaker than, and that's not really the case. When your own mind turns against you and becomes your own enemy, I don't care where you go to get away from it, you're not going to escape it. So what do? You have to deal with the root cause of what's causing the issue. What's causing that depression? What's causing that anxiety? What's at the root of all of this? And, especially after COVID, we had 2 years of isolation. I don't know if people are still right from that, and that's really something that's best explored by a mental health professional. And when we look at the number of suicides, in the country, I've personally been touched by suicide. You never want anybody to get to that point, right?
Right.
Because there's always options. And when you're in the depths, when you're, lying at the bottom of the canyon, you're thinking, hey, this is it. This is where I'm meant to be. We have to come to the realization that there is always options for us. They might not be attractive or pretty or not what we want to hear, but there's always options, and it's just a matter of figuring them out. And that's where mental health professionals come into play. And they are so understaffed and overworked and underappreciated. And I'm sure probably burning out like many teachers are across the country. It's a tough job. You take the weight on of other people's burdens. You take the weight on of other people's fears and insecurities. And if you're empathic, that can really take a toll. So it's important too for the caregiver to get help, to have someone to voice off to have a soundboard, to have someone to offer them sage advice. And we've kind of in this country in the past 10 years have tried to subscribe to pull yourself up by the bootstrap. It's not that bad. Well, the thing about mental illness, it's as real an illness as is diabetes. You can't just snap out of diabetes. You can't just snap out of alcoholism. So we have to come to that moment and just say, hey, we really need to make a concerted effort to make the physical and the mental and make it 100% whole, because otherwise we're really only caring for half the human product. We're caring
Right.
for the physical, but not the mental.
Mhm.
And that's, that's something we really have to address.
When we're recording this here in February of 2023, just this past week, our governor, or not our governor, our senator, John Fetterman, uh, reached out and has gotten help to be treated for depression.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of people were applauding him for kind of being open and upfront about that. And, he's faced some medical conditions and medical issues himself over the last year, in addition to running a, Senate campaign. So, I'm sure he has a lot on his mind and a lot on his plate. So I think, that's a good move on his part to kind of he's going to bring awareness to this issue, no doubt.
I think so, because it really, if you take a look at John Fetterman, you realize here's this very big, scary looking guy who, has the problems of Joe Everyman, right? Except Senator Fetterman is getting help for that. Whereas, the person, sitting at home, well, they might not have medical care, or they might have a high copay to see a mental health professional. So we really have to come together, if we're serious about helping the healthcare crisis in this country. We have to have a two-pronged approach at the very least, the physical and the mental, to tie everything together and to get us back to some form of normalcy. Although I don't suspect that we'll ever see normal as we knew it prior to COVID.
Right. And I think too, people's mental state has a lot of an impact on their physical state as well. So I think maybe the mental health of people is even more important than the physical, because I think the mental aspect would feed the physical aspect as well. So yeah, good words. And I know, having a lot of friends who are teachers, including Gary is a teacher now. My wife was a nurse. She worked in the hospital, at the beginning of the pandemic. And I know a number of people as well who are healthcare professionals. They do have a lot on their shoulders, and mentally, they're going through a lot for the last 3 years. So yeah, it is important to kind of keep them in mind as well.
They're heroes, plain and simple.
Yep. Before we go, Paul, do you have anything to plug? Anywhere we can find your writing? Do you have a website or anything like that?
Right now, I'm writing basically personally for myself and just trying to develop a voice, a different voice than the one I currently have. As I said before, I'm exploring the horror genre there a bit, and just doing some experimental stuff and noodling around and having fun with it, and hopefully improving upon my craft. I'll send you something. You can be the judge. I'll buy you a pizza.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right. We usually have, Paul, at the end of the show, we have theme music.
Okay. So we're going to beatbox.
We're going to have to, because you're going to beatbox while I do the show outro, or
Okay.
show outro. Yeah.
The show outro.
Yeah.
What's my motivation?
We've just had a really good time over the last hour, reconnecting and reminiscing.
I love it. Let's roll with it. In
Ready?
3, 2.
That's going to be all for tonight on the Brian Lennon Show on Substack. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to my special guest, Paul Lazar. As always, my co-host and producer extraordinaire, although a little questionable tonight, Gary McDaniel. That'll be all. We'll talk to you next week.
Peace out, everyone.